Hello, my name's Toby Thompson. I'm here today with Dr. Tazeeb Rajwani, lecturer in strategic management here at Cranfield School of Management. Tazeeb, you're an author of the forthcoming book, 2012, Aligning for Advantage, Business Strategy for the Political and Social Arenas. Also author of many papers on political activities of organisations, lobbying and so on. So we're here today on the day that Egyptians at least are in the day of departure protest, looking to oust President Hosni Mubarak in Egypt. Serious times. What does all that mean for businesses, for firms, not just in Egypt, but throughout the world?
Very good question. Toby, I think, we need to start from the antecedents. We need to understand first, what exactly is political risk? Essentially, political risk is the risk of losing money as a result of unstable governments or regulatory environments. And, examples of this are kind of terrorism, wars, and in this case, a kind of regime that's unstable and losing power. And I think it's very important to understand that there are a large number of multinational firms, and my research shows this, that don't really understand or appreciate how to deal with political risk. And political risk really can impact firms, as we can see right now, quite badly. And I'll give you some examples. So, as you know just now, in North Africa and the Middle East, there's a lot of turbulence. There's toxic kind of mix happening there, where in Egypt, for example, we can see quite clearly that unemployment rate is around 9.4%. Inflation rate is around 12%. The middle class at the moment that are educated, are looking for jobs. They can't find those jobs. So as a result, they want to get Hosni Mubarak out. And obviously, we can see from Tunisia to now what's happening in Yemen, down to Jordan, there is this kind of cascade effect, and the genie's out of the bottle. So what I think now is that there are companies out there that are losing a lot of value. So in the case of a company that I recently spoke to, a Portuguese company called Banco Espírito Santo, which is actively got some sites in Libya, for example, are closely watching what's happening in Egypt. And you can see some Indian fast movable kind of consumer goods companies such as Dabur or Marico, companies that are fourth largest companies with regards to skincare, healthcare, foods. They're losing market share and they're losing at the same time revenues. Manufacturing sites are getting closed in Egypt. And if you can look at Egypt as a kind of hub, a strategic cornerstone for the North African kind of Middle East region, what we're seeing is at the moment there is this kind of slowdown taking place. Supply chains are getting squeezed. We're seeing oscillations in oil prices. And as a result of all these things, we're seeing now top management teams getting hit hard. IBM, Version, that have huge kind of resources placed in Egypt at the moment are suffering because they've got no people there because they're protesting. So people are kind of shutting down sites. So what does this mean? I think companies need to be thinking very carefully here about this risk that I think is here to stay.
I mean, that's a very big picture you paint there.
Yeah.
Practically, how do companies manage risk?
I think firstly what companies need to do is understand insurance. I think insurance can be a very powerful way to mitigate political risk. Obviously, if you're looking at macro level political risk, these catastrophes are very difficult to manage, but companies can do it, and catastrophes require premiums, so you would have to pay a lot of money for this. But I think you got to look at it in combinations with other methods to mitigate political risk. Second point is, I would say, companies need to understand that they have to be proactive. They have to put in place political risk control procedures, I would call them. And I think some companies have chief risk officers, some have government affairs directors, and their job is to analyze the political arena, develop political capabilities and resources to deal with this risk on an ongoing basis using all sorts of techniques like scoring, which I won't get into, but my book does. Third point I would say is to deal with risks, on an ongoing basis. It's not very easy to kind of identify all the political risks, but you have to do it on an ongoing basis. And I think companies that are able to do it effectively can, I think, sustain a competitive advantage. I think also companies need to acknowledge that there is a macro and a micro political risk environment. And what I mean by this is that at the macro level, it's at the kind of country national level. Very difficult to deal with, but at micro level, which is project level, it's more easier to deal with. And then finally, companies need to diversify their risks. I think these political risks can be diversified. Countries that have strategic business units in different geographies need to acknowledge that where there is kind of a way to reduce your cost base, there are some regions that look very attractive, but with that comes high political risk. So if you want to move into Nigeria, there is high political risk. But at the same time, cheap materials do exist. So there's a trade-off. You need to diversify your resources in strategic business units throughout different regions, and don't focus on just putting all your eggs in one basket.
Practical advice for interesting times. Tazeeb Rajwani, thank you very much indeed for your time today.